Good morning and welcome to Morning Scoop for Monday, April 18th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Notre Dame game is in 138 days, the game against Michigan in 222 days. The Ohio State spring game was Saturday, and then Sunday, the results of the big recruiting weekend began to pour in. The Buckeyes added a pair of commitments on Easter. Today, we're going to be talking about both of them. My guest today had a busier Sunday than the Easter Bunny. Marc Givler wrote both of those commitment impact articles, breaking down where Dijon Johnson and Bryson Rodgers fit in the Buckeyes 2023 class and what they'll mean for the class moving forward. Marc, thanks for being here.
Yep, good to be here. Like we talked about recently, recruiting is picking up.
Yeah, we are suddenly, we got through the spring football season, we went through the winter workout season, we went through the spring visit season, and now it's like, okay, now you're starting to see some of the results of that, and then we'll get into summer evaluation camps, and all of a sudden it'll be football season again. It's crazy how that happens. Turns out there's no off season for Ohio State football. Let's start today's show talking about Bryson Rodgers. He was the first guy to commit on Sunday. I could read off the recruiting ranking information, or I could just say, this is a wide receiver who Brian Hartline really likes. And I think we all really know which of those is probably a better predictor of what Bryson Rodgers could be at the college level. So what is Brian Hartline getting in Bryson Rodgers?
Yeah, this is another guy that's kind of right up Hartline's alley. He's 6'1", maybe 6'2", so he's a little bit bigger than maybe some of these guys like Jackson Smith-Njigba, Keon Grays, who I've kind of compared him to a little bit. But he can play anywhere. He can play outside, can play inside. He's a great route runner. He's got great feet, very quick. But again, a little bigger than some of these other guys that they've recruited as far as his height. So when he fills out, he's going to be a really good size receiver. I think he'll play outside. I think, maybe the Marvin Harrison Jr. kind of position. But again, versatile to play inside and out. And just super polished, super competitive, and a great kid, very, very intelligent kid. But again, Hartline likes these guys who can kind of play just about anywhere and doesn't like the guy who's only a deep threat or who's only a slot receiver. Kind of likes guys that can move around, and this guy fits that. And I think there's some parallels to draw with Keon Grays, especially guys that weren't super highly ranked when Hartline started recruiting them, but have been moving up the rankings and I think could continue to do so. I mean, he scored 17 touchdowns this past season, so he's doing something right.
Yeah, I saw him in person on Saturday, and he is a pretty tall dude. So yeah, there's a lot to like there. We've actually talked about Bryson Rodgers on this show before. He's someone who you may remember Alex Gleitman was on pretty early in the process, and Alex had talked to him and found out he had a bunch of links to Ohio and was like, guys, I think we ought to better keep an eye on this one, and he was right. Ohio State is in on a bunch of other really elite wide receivers in this class we've been talking about as well. There's been some chatter about Carnell Tate potentially heading somewhere like Tennessee instead of Ohio State. We've talked a bunch about Brandon Innes over the last few months, so we can kind of set those guys to the side, but who else are they potentially looking at for 2023 at wide receiver? And then how many guys do you think they take in this class?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, they want to take 3 every class. If they could map things out perfectly, they would take exactly 3 every year. But we know, life doesn't work that way. Guys transfer, guys get injured, or really right now in Brian Hartline's case, guys leave the program after 3 years for the NFL. We just saw Garrett Wilson do that. We're spoiler alert, I think we're going to see Jackson Smith-Njigba do that. And then God knows after that, I mean, you could see Marvin Harrison Jr. and or Emeka Egbuka do the same thing. So it's becoming more difficult to keep your numbers up when you're losing guys to the NFL early. So I personally would bet on 4. I just think it's going to work out that way. I think Smith-Njigba is going to go early. I think, again, you lose one guy at any point to the portal. You have some guys on the roster right now who are potential 3-and-dones in the sophomore class. I just think it's going to end up settling on 4. But, you mentioned obviously the 2 targets who get the most attention, who, and rightfully so, kind of the 2 top guys on the board. But, one interesting development recently was Jalen Hale, a big-time receiver, a high 4-star kid, top 100 type of kid out of Longview, Texas. This was a guy who, when they initially offered him, he was one of the first guys in this class that Hartline offered. when that happened, we kind of all thought, oh, this might be the next, Texas to Ohio State receiver. And things kind of cooled, maybe not even cooled is the right word, but they just kind of, didn't seem to be a whole lot of juice there between Ohio State and Jalen Hale for several months. And he pops back up on campus recently. Visit went great. So I think they're right in the mix there. And they get Rico Flores Jr. on campus out of California as another, 4-star type of guy. Again, you're getting these guys, you're getting to see these guys in person. They're making the trips. They're saying the right things. I think they're in the mix there. And those are kind of, I guess, the next two I would look at once we get beyond Brandon Inniss and Carnell Tate. Those are probably those next two guys that I think Ohio State's kind of focused on right now. And there's some other guys, Noah Rogers out of North Carolina. There's several irons in the fire, but I think again the two I just mentioned, along with the two you mentioned, is probably a good starting point for how Ohio State would like this to play out here with the next 2 or 3 receivers in this class.
All right, and then the other commitment on Sunday was Dijon Johnson, so brace yourself for years of terrible mustard puns from Tony Gerdeman. I'm very sorry, there's nothing I can do. Believe me, if I could, I would stop him. So Dijon Johnson is on the other side of the ball at corner. It sounds like you, from what you were writing, were pretty impressed with his film as well.
Yeah, I try not to play this card too often because when you start to do this too much, it just people become numb to it. It loses its meaning. But I really think they got a steal here. I think this is and I shouldn't say sleeper is kind of an interesting word. His ranking varies greatly. I believe On3 has him in the top 100, which I would agree with. And then Rivals has him as a low 3, like the lowest rated 3-star the lowest graded 3-star you can be, which I obviously disagree with. But again, I think this is a guy who is much better than his ranking has indicated, and I think he just moved in the top 100 with On3. I don't think he was there initially, so he's picking up some steam. It's one of those guys where you look at his film and it instantly just jumps out to you. The first 4 or 5 plays are just tremendous interceptions, and they're all different in how they occur. I mean, one, he's press man. They try and throw over the top on him. He runs stride for stride, makes kind of an over-the-shoulder catch, showing some ball skills. There's one where he's coming kind of from off the screen, just breaks on something down the seam. There's another one where his man kind of goes down the sideline. They got a crossing route coming in behind his man. He jumps off his man, jumps the crossing route, interception. Like, just so many different ways he's hurting opposing quarterbacks. Just unbelievable instincts, intelligence, like plays that a lot of guys aren't going to make. They're not going to jump off their man to jump the route. They're not going to take that type of risk or even see it coming. So just a lot of instinctual stuff there. And then he's 6'1", so he's ideally sized. He's run 4.5 laser, from what I understand. I believe he was at he ran a 4.5 laser at the Under Armour camp down that way. So he's got speed. He's one of my favorite players of all time, just from watching him at Ohio State and watching him with the Philadelphia Eagles. But he reminds me a lot of Malcolm Jenkins, just his size and instincts and ball skills and how he runs. And I know that's really high praise and probably unfair at this point, but that's kind of what I saw on the tape. And Malcolm Jenkins was a 3-star in high school, so it wasn't like he was a 5-star. So. But I'm super impressed with him. He's a guy who immediately jumps out to me as, okay, I think this guy's better than what people think, or what people maybe their excitement level should be higher than what it is.
All right, so both of these guys are Florida commits. If you have ever heard Bill Green on this show, you know that Bill Green will talk about Florida commits with, kind of like a little bit of a cocked eyebrow. With, you get, it seems like you get a higher percentage of game players down there. And Ohio State has had plenty of guys from down there that were just done, locked and loaded immediately from the first time they committed. And they've had guys who've played the game. They've had guys who've played the game and then left. I guess the obvious question is, do you have any sense for, are these solid commitments? Is there any reason to think that these might be commitments that get revisited in some form later on in the process?
Well, look, I mean, they're recruiting against programs like Alabama and Georgia and Florida. They're recruiting against big programs here, and I don't expect a lot of these schools to just let guys off the hook like that. I expect, other schools will still try to recruit these guys. But, Bryson Rodgers with the Ohio ties, the dream offer, this is what he wanted, comes up and visits. I mean, everything looks good there with Bryson Rodgers. Dijon Johnson, not the same in terms of the Ohio, not necessarily like the Ohio ties that Bryson Rodgers has, but like this was another kid who immediately upon being offered, it was like you could tell this was one of the 2 or 3 offers he really wanted. And I think a lot of at that time was like, well, would they take him? And obviously we know now that they would. But I look at these guys and I don't see Florida guys who fell in love with Ohio State. I see guys who just so happen to live in Florida who have always loved Ohio State. So I think that's going to help them here. And look, not to make, jokes about the geography or whatever, but, they're Tampa and Fort Lauderdale might as well, be in 2 different universes as far as the game playing goes. A little more stable there on the Gulf Coast in Tampa. Those guys are, generally a little more stable, a little more reasonable. South Florida gets a little hairy. But I think they're pretty safe. But you never know what happens with as we've talked about here just in this podcast is they are going to take several receivers. They are going to take several defensive backs. Sometimes as things develop, you don't get to keep all of them. You try and take 6 guys at a position, and someone sees the writing on the wall and goes somewhere else. I don't think that's going to happen here, but you can never be sure.
All right. And one place where they're not going to take 6 guys, but they might take one very, very highly rated guy for 2024 is quarterback. One of the other big names visiting this weekend was 5-star quarterback Dylan Raiola for the 2024 class. We were there on Saturday, and while there were a bunch of other recruits waiting to check in line in the stadium, Corey Dennis drove Raiola and his family right into the stadium on a golf cart. It was like, I found the 5-star. Okay, good. What a neat trick that I just pulled, identifying him solely by his means of transport. Add in the fact that there was another elite 2024 quarterback, Jaden Davis, he was supposed to visit and then didn't. It sure feels to me like the Buckeyes have zeroed in on their guy, and there might be some news from Dylan Raiola at some point soon-ish.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect something pretty soon. If you're Ohio State, I don't think you're in a position ever, if you're any school, I don't think you're in a position to just shut the door necessarily on a guy like Jaden Davis unless you're pretty confident something else is brewing. I would expect a decision from Dylan Raiola here. Let's say weeks, not months. Could be even sooner than that, but I would say weeks, not months there right now. I don't think we're going to be waiting much longer on that. And if it happens like we expect it to, unbelievable pickup. And we'll see. We'll see what he decides to do here in the next couple of weeks with an announcement possibly. And he's big time. The thing I think that stands out to me with him is just how big and strong he is with that arm, but he's also athletic. It's one of those things where I think he does a lot of the things you would expect Jaden Davis to do, but he's doing it at 6'3", 6'4", instead of 6 foot 6'1". So just really the total package, and a guy who has been a top target for a lot of the quarterback friendly schools and coaches. Obviously Lincoln Riley has him right there at the top of his board too. So if you're at the top of Lincoln Riley and Ryan Day's board, that should probably say enough.
Yeah, and if you're not sold on that, 247 has him as literally the number 1 overall player in the class. So seems like there's a broad industry consensus there between some coaches and some media folks that might be a not too bad pickup if the Buckeyes could seal that one in the coming days to weeks. Any other names to keep in mind as potential commits to watch in the next few weeks? I mean, we're obviously still 8 months out from even early signing day for 2023, but are there other guys who you're at least kind of like keeping one eye on social media?
Yeah, there's a couple I think worth watching. Look, Brandon Innes, maybe that's a summer thing and not so much a spring thing, but I don't think Brandon Innes is going to take his recruiting process all the way into November, December. I think we're going to hear something from Brandon Innes. I would think by the middle of summer, but could be sooner. So that's a guy that I keep looking at. I keep thinking they're in great shape there. Carnell Tate with the never-ending moving target on the decision dates, another one to continue to watch. Obviously, yes, Tennessee does have some momentum right now, and I believe, has at least replaced Notre Dame as Ohio State's main competition. I'm not ready to say Tennessee's in the driver's seat there yet, but I think if you look at this right now, I think Tennessee's got a better chance of stealing this one from Ohio State than Notre Dame. That could come down the road at any point. Kayan Leave, the corner out of Cedar Grove High School outside of Atlanta, former Georgia commit, was a big Ohio State target. Decommitted from Georgia. Ohio State's kept the pedal to the metal on that one. That's a guy I could see deciding here at some point in the spring. That's another one to kind of keep an eye on. And, you kind of go from there. You wonder, you look at someone like Arvell Reese from Cleveland Glenville. Now Arvell's talking about doing the traditional Glenville thing of, kind of like an Army Bowl or an Under Armour game type of announcement, and maybe he will. But that could be one where maybe Ohio State wants an answer before January. So I could see maybe some things clicking there this spring. And then even another guy, I know I'm throwing out so many names here, but a guy like Tackett Curtis, that's another guy who has done a lot of research this winter into the spring to kind of get himself in position to make a decision. I think that's going to be a potential spring decision as well. And Ohio State's in pretty good shape there as well. So I could see any of those guys, making a spring decision, making a decision by, let's call it, by June 1 or something. And some of this may bleed into the summer as it often does, but those are all guys worth, keeping an eye on. We're not going to be talking about them, I don't think, in like January or anything like that.
Yeah, there are still 8 months to go till the early signing day, but generally there is a steady drip of news between then and now. Early signing day in December, not January. It's never been in January. Come on, I know this stuff.
That's when the All-American game announcements are, though.
That's true. That's true.
I signed in December 16th, but here's my announcement on January 5th. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Ohio State had one of those last year and may have another one of those this year. Who knows? There's a long way to go till early signing day and the All-American games and then regular signing day. But there should be a lot of fun stuff to talk about between now and then. And we'll be talking about it on all of our great podcasts. Mark co-hosts the Gives in the Bank podcast with the great Bill the Bank Green. That is always worth a listen. They do a tremendous job covering recruiting. Alex Gleitman does Around the Oval. He has a lot of recruits on as well. He was been very, very busy this weekend talking to guys who are visiting Ohio State. He had some great content on the Ask the Insiders board. Kevin Noon does the Big Me Kickoff. Tony Girdman and I do Buckeye Weekly. You can find them all. Just search Buckeye Scoop wherever you listen to this one. You can subscribe right there and also leave us a 5-star rating and review, which will help other folks find those shows, in which we do truly appreciate. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.